most of you guys know there was a rally in DC that I was at, that I covered, called the Rage Against the War Machine rally. Now, it was estimated there were approximately, I think they said 1,000 to 2,000 people that were there. That is the largest anti-war rally that I've been at. That is the largest rally that I've been at since the George Floyd protests. Since the George Floyd protests. So I think people have to really understand that most of these protests that I've went to and my comrades have gone to don't even get 1,000 people. Not in this country. So why are we looking at Germany? Because Germany just had a similar protest, and they are protesting against sending more arms to Ukraine. But they were able to get about 25,000 people out in the street. Check out this video. I have a couple of videos that I want to show you, but here's an overview here. You can actually see an overview of the crowd here. 25,000 people. Look at this.
Genauso sage ich auch, jeder, der ehrlichen Herzens mit uns für Frieden.
Oh, and by the way, notice they have umbrellas, which means that it was raining, and they still showed up.
Und ich finde auch das möchte ich hier noch mal sagen. Melnik und auch andere Größen. Ist das für eine verlogene Debatte? Das möchte ich auch noch mal deutlich sagen.
Hab ich auch gesagt. Wo ist das nicht wahr? Ja. Ja, gut. Ja. Ja, gut.
Yeah, they show up. And it's not just them.
Sage ich auch, jeder.
It's not just them. Other countries in Europe, they have these same turnout numbers. Denmark had 50,000 people show up last week to protest in the streets. Now, it says here, this is from Apocalyptus. About 25,000 Berliners took to the streets to rally against arms supplies to Kyiv. People gathered on the square near Brandenburg Gate and called on Olaf Scholz to immediately stop the escalation of the conflict. The event was organized. Let me click on here because it doesn't show her full name. That's Sarah Wagenknecht. I believe Glenn Greenwald interviewed her recently. I think this is the woman that Glenn Greenwald interviewed, because I think there was a translator, or she needed a translator or something like that. So it was organized by her and Alice Schwarzer. Alice doesn't have her picture there. Now, there's more. So again, similar message. Similar message that we had in DC. 25,000 people out in the streets. Now, some of this goes to the fact that they are directly affected in ways that we're not affected. For example, they do have the energy crisis that they are going through right now, which is problematic. I told you guys what was happening to people in the UK, where they were having to go to warm banks just to get heat because they can't afford to pay their heating bill. They are really affected by the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So that could be part of it. But even when it's not this particular situation, they can get 50,000 people out in the street. They don't play around with that. If they feel that their government is not doing the right thing, they have no problem getting out in the street. And this is why I say time and time again, the American people are incredibly propagandized. There's too many people fighting each other and saying, don't go to this thing, go to that thing. Don't have this speaker, have that speaker. And so what happens is it crushes support for it. Fewer people are going to show up. And then you have all these separate events when you just could collaborate or consolidate and have more people. You think they're doing that in Germany? You think they're doing that in Denmark? saying to people, no, you go do your thing over here, and we're going to go do our thing over here. And we don't want to be seen with you, and we don't want to be seen with. Do you see the problem? They come together on a united front. Now, I think it's important to mention, notice who they said organized the event. So you have Sarah and you have Alice Schwarzer. Now, Sarah, let's pull this up for a second so you can see. Sarah, please. Oh, no, Sarah, it's all in German. I was like, Sarah, please. I wish I could translate. I really do. And they don't have that option. But if I'm not mistaken, Sarah is a politician there. Right? So I think there's a big difference between us and Europe in the sense that our politicians, they don't participate. Most of the time, they don't show up, even when they're invited or asked to. And they definitely don't lead it. And this is something that Claire Daly was talking about on the show when she came on. She said, the political leadership is also involved when it comes to the outside game. And that is the piece that we are missing here in this country. Because it's true. If we would have had Bernie Sanders or AOC or the rest of the squad, if they would have supported the marches for Medicare for All 2 years ago, we could have had thousands of people out in the street. Just supporting it, not even necessarily leading it. And then the other organizer was Alice Schwarzer, who's a journalist. So it really does matter when you have that support. Now, I have another video here that I want to show. And this is titled, Protesters Call for End of Arms Supply to Ukraine Amid Munich Security Conference. Let's go ahead and get into this. Actually, I want to turn the volume up on this one.
Das darf man nicht. Was für Hohn, was für eine Perversität, ja? Partner aus. Dialog bedeutet Zwiegespräch, da gehören immer mindestens zwei.
Und die Menschen in Deutschland wollen Frieden, die Menschen in Deutschland wollen kein.
He said the German people want peace over war. So these are people protesting for peace. Just like we were doing in DC. You guys see the difference when we talk about the propaganda? Let's go on.
Keinen Krieg, die wollen auch keine Waffenlieferungen in die Ukraine und das bringen sie hier sehr deutlich zum Ausdruck. Und wie
He said they do not want to supply arms to Ukraine. Isn't this exactly what we were saying in DC? And notice how immediately the smears, if you call for peace, it's one thing to say you're cheering on Russia. It's another thing to say you want peace and you want the war to end. And for people like Rachel Maddow to smear the event, and for other people to still say, oh, yes, you're a Putin puppet when you're calling for peace. Let's go on.
Wir sehen es ganz deutlich, dass die USA profitieren. Sie profitieren geopolitisch, weil sie die rote Linie verschoben haben, ihre Einflusszone erweitert haben. Aber sie profitieren auch ökonomisch. Sie profitieren von den Embargos und vor allem sie profitieren von den Waffenverkäufen. Das sind ja heute.
He basically said that the United States is profiting from it. He said, like, economically, the U.S. profits from this conflict. And Germany obviously is not. They have the energy crisis. Like a lot of these countries in Europe right now, they're hit really hard when it comes to the energy crisis because they were getting their gas from the Nord Stream pipeline, which is connected to Russia. So if you cut that off, of course, they're going to be affected. Let's go on.
20 Demos in München, die meisten mit dem Thema Frieden. Die einigende, übergreifende Meinung, dass man eben nicht mit einer Kriegseskalation den Frieden erzwingt.
There were more than 20 protests in Munich that day. More than 20. And we have to beg people to come to one. They had more than 20.
I think they do not talk much about peace, just about more weapons.
Yep. There you go. Bingo. No, they're not talking about peace. Every time, all I hear them talking about is weapons and money. Give me more money. Give us more aid. Give us more this. Now, The Guardian, I was kind of surprised by this because I know their position on this conflict, but The Guardian actually, they discussed this as well. Now, let's hear how they spoke about it. And this was in Berlin. So it wasn't just the protests in Munich. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. Across the country, they were having these protests. Thousands protest in Berlin against giving weapons to Ukraine. 13,000 people gather in Brandenburg Gate. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Sorry. Okay. About 13,000 people gather at Brandenburg Gate as demonstrations also take place in other German cities. See, they don't play around. When they protest, they take it to that level. They're not playing around. They're not sitting around saying, who's the speaker? Thousands of people have taken part in a demonstration in central Berlin to protest against giving more weapons to Ukraine, urging the German government to de-escalate the crisis by paving the way for negotiations with Vladimir Putin. You see that? They're asking for negotiations. Police estimate there were 13,000 people at the uprising for peace. At the Brandenburg Gate, organized by Sarah Wagenknecht, a renegade member of the Left Party, and veteran feminist campaigner Alice Schwarzer, the organizers claimed as many as 50,000 people took part. 50,000 people. And you know what's interesting, and I have to say this as someone who really loves sports, sometimes it's pretty depressing in this country that we can easily get 50,000 people, more than 50,000 people, to show up to a college football game, to show up to a college basketball game, to show up to an NBA game, an NFL game. No problem. Drop of a hat. We can get thousands of people to get in line and wait for the next new iPhone. But we can't get thousands of people to come out and protest in the streets and call for peace. Even when it comes to the economic situation in this country, we talk about the class issue. With the way that inflation has been in this country, the prices being extremely high, still high for people, we should have already had thousands of people out in the street protesting over that issue alone. But this is where it's like the American mentality is just so different. It's just so different in the sense that people would rather go stand in line for hours to get into a concert, stand in line for hours to get into a game, stand in line for hours outside of a store before it even opens to get the new iPhone. But you won't show up where you don't really have to stand in a line and march in the streets with your neighbor to protest against this war. That's the problem. And that's the difference here. Let's go on. In a speech at the protest, Sarah spoke of the start of the Citizens Initiative and a starting signal for a new, strong peace movement in Germany. She said the demonstrators had been united by the fact they did not feel represented by the government of Olaf Scholz and his foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, over their decision to provide Ukraine with weapons. Let me say this again. They were united over that one issue. See how all of them were able to come together for that one issue? Let's go on. Protesters carry banners reading helmets today, tanks tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, your sons, in reference to the manner in which the coalition government has increased its military support for Kyiv, initially donating 5,000 helmets and more recently agreeing to send German-made Leopard tanks. Other banners read, "Not my war, not my government." Imagine, you see what I mean? They have no problem saying these things. We are like the slaves to war and the warmongers. That comes from Norbert, who's a former soldier, declining to give his surname. He held a banner reading, "The real enemy sits in the city of London and New York," a reference, he said, to the financial powers who he claimed were behind it. I have to be careful what I say. And had no interest in ending it. Germany, he said, had no right to participate in another war after the Second World War. See how they can just openly make these statements? Just openly. One man held a banner on which he said people had been numbed into accepting the war by sedative effects of the jab. Around the demonstration, loudspeakers blasted peace songs such as John Lennon's Imagine and Nina's 99 Red Balloons. A woman called Edith, carrying a large portrait of the Indian revolutionary Gandhi, said we should follow his example of nonviolent resistance to bring an end to this madness. Elsewhere, other nearby demonstrators showed sympathy for Ukraine with banners reading "Stop Putin's War" and "Help Ukraine defend itself." So you see, they showed up in the rain. A poster held by a group of anti-fascist demonstrators pointed out how Sarah had put warnings of a Russian invasion of Ukraine down to media propaganda, stating in a TV broadcast on February 20th, 2022, "We can be happy that Putin is not like he is presented as being, namely a crazy Russian nationalist who is intoxicated with the idea of shifting borders. If that was the case, the negotiations would probably be pointless." A group of Ukrainians wrapped in their country's flag outside the nearby Russian embassy held up posters and slogans including "Not delivering weapons to Ukraine is the equivalent to genocide support." So they had other people on the other side as well. Roman Overko from the Ukrainian city of Lviv, who now lives in Berlin, said the idea of negotiating is naive. How do you negotiate with such enemies of humanity? You can't talk to them like normal people. And he said Putin is a second Hitler. So there you go. It goes on to say a Ukrainian film director in Berlin to present his documentary Eastern Front, shot on the front line with a volunteer medics battalion, said before the demonstration, "The demonstrators say they are pacifists. Well, I'm a pacifist too. But imagine someone's trying to blow your doors down. If you don't shoot back, they'll just kill you. Take all you have, rape your wife, kill your children. To make an arrangement with a clinically mad old guy makes no sense." So that's the other argument. Baerbock was singled out at the demonstration as the German member with the most responsibility for drawing Germany deeper into the conflict. Participants angrily shouted "Baerbock Ross" or "Baerbock out" during and at the end of Sarah's address. Scholz and the pro-business FDP's Marie Agnes, head of Bundestag Defense Committee, who has pressured the government to deliver more military support, were also criticized. Sarah said her main motivation was to bring an end to the terrible suffering and dying in Ukraine. And this is the thing we need to talk about too, because I've mentioned this as well. The longer that this conflict continues, the more people are going to die. And we're not just talking about the people on the battlefield. We're talking about the civilian casualties as well. That's a reality with any war. That's what happens. This is why people are calling for peace. Sarah said her main, but that meant offering Russia negotiations, he said, instead of a never-ending war of attrition, whichever newer weapons. She said her childhood fears of a nuclear war in the 1980s had been revived by the current conflict. The risk of the expansion of the war across Europe and possibly the world was very big. 2 weeks ago, Sarah and Schwarzenegger had published a manifest for peace in which they urged Chancellor Scholz to stop the escalation in weapon deliveries. It has so far been signed by over 650,000 people, including prominent intellectuals and political figures. And there's something I want to add here for those who are not aware. The Green Party of Germany actually supported sending the weapons. However, when you talk to the people, the citizens of Germany, they did not want it. So the politicians went against what the actual people of Germany wanted. And that's why you have so many of them out in the streets. And yes, you heard that correctly. The Green Party of Germany. Now, I've told you before that they are also affected by the energy crisis. And what people have to understand is that it's also affecting families and businesses as well. It's not just a matter of families trying to decide, am I going to be able to pay for my heating bill? It's not just that, although that's a part of it. It's also affecting businesses. I want to share this clip here. Now, this is a family. Germany's energy crisis threatens a family-run business. So let's listen to this clip. Let's make sure it's loud enough.
It's early morning in the small town of St. Ingbert in the western German state of Saarland. Thomas Peterman and his wife are getting their butcher shop ready for the day. In Saarland, it's said that a butcher is measured against the quality of his Lyoner sausage. And the quality here has made Butcher Peterman's one of the best, not only in the state, but in the entire country for 25 years straight.
Analoch Leona. So, wenn ich Theken nahm, ein bisschen schöner Innenräume.
This family-run business has been a proud staple in the community for the past 84 years, but Germany's energy crisis threatens to jeopardize its future. Energy usage is high here for the production and cooling of their 200 specialized meat products.
Also wir haben im Moment im letzten Jahr Elektrizität 100.000 Kilowattstunden gehabt. Ja, das ist schon sogar der normale Durchschnitt. Ich meine, wir müssen, wie gesagt, die Kühlmaschine laufen, das Fleisch muss gekühlt werden. Da kann man jetzt nicht so, wir können jetzt so irgendwas abschalten oder wir haben schon vieles umgestellt.
So they use a lot of energy, obviously, at this butcher shop because they have to keep the meat cold.
Also wir haben die ganze Beleuchtung ist LED. Dann haben wir Photovoltaik auf dem Dach. Also wir sind doch schon relativ gut aufgestellt. Aber also im Moment schon die Preisentwicklung ist schon dramatisch.
Mr. Peterman has a fixed contract for electricity for a few more months, and he has made changes designed to save energy, but his monthly electricity bill still runs upwards of 4,000 euros.
So he's already implemented some changes to try to reduce the energy. He has the LED lights that can help some, right? So he's tried, but it's not enough. And so the reason why I wanted to show you this clip is because I want people to understand it's not just about the energy use in their homes. It's also about the energy use in these businesses. Like, do you want these businesses to have to close because they can't afford to pay the energy bill? Another reason why we need to call for peace.
Also bei anderen Kollegen, die haben schon sie müssen teilweise das Doppelte zahlen. Wenn man holt, dass man so monatliche Abschlagszahlungen von 4.000 Euro haben, dann wäre das 8.000 Euro im Monat. Dann müssen wir schon überlegen, ob wir Personal entlassen oder wie wir halt weiterverfahren, dass wir überhaupt überleben können.
He is not alone. Many small and medium-sized businesses, already struggling to recoup losses from COVID-19, are being weighed down further by rising food and energy prices.
8,000 euro to US dollars is $8,441, approximately $8,441. So that's what he said. I just want you guys to understand what that is in US dollars.
Hat sich wesentlich erhöht dieses Jahr. Also die Bauern brauchen ist der Diesel viel teurer geworden. Und somit ist Fleisch und die Futtermittel alles viel teurer geworden. Das Fleisch, kann man sagen, hat sich fast verdoppelt. Und wir merken halt auch, dass der Kunde zurückhaltend ist, weil die Leute halt auch selbst wenig Geld haben.
According to the International Monetary Fund, rising energy costs alone slashed the average German household's total spending power in 2022 by 4%. Mr. Peterman's wife, Sabine, who works at the front of the shop, says she sees the impact.
Ja, man merkt schon, dass die Kundschaft halt zurückhaltender ist beim Einkauf, ne? Dass sie halt weniger kaufen, ne? Wie vorher. Und auch weniger hierher kommen. Ich denke, die gehen dann eher wieder so Richtung Supermarkt, weil es dort halt günstiger ist, ne? Durch die
Yeah, so people are starting to gravitate towards the supermarkets instead of going to the butcher shop like they normally would because of the prices. The prices are cheaper at the supermarkets. Now the quality is better at the butcher shop. So they're already starting to lose business. This war affects everybody. Like it doesn't matter if you own a business or not, but especially over there. Because the inflation rate, I have to double check, but last time I checked, the inflation rate in the UK was like 10.4%. So it's affecting everyone.
Angebote dort.
Germany's Federal Statistics Office says that since Berlin began cutting the country's dependence on cheap Russian energy, gas prices for non-household customers, such as businesses the size of Mr. Peterman's butcher shop, have increased nearly 39%, while electricity has gone up 19%.
39% for gas prices, 19% for electricity. So those are the increases there.
The problem is that energy alternatives are not cheap. To keep up with demand while it builds up its own renewable energy infrastructure, Germany has had to import gas and oil from more expensive sources, passing those costs, in part, on to the customer.
Ja gut, ich kann das nachvollziehen, dass man da irgendwelche Sanktionen machen müsse. Aber dass unser Gas jetzt so verknappt wird, dass bei uns der ganze Mittelstand irgendwo vor die Hunde geht. Also ich weiß von einigen Firmen, die jetzt zusperren müssen. Das bringt uns auch nicht weiter. Also wir müssen langsam mal unserem eigenen.
So he said he knows companies that have already had to close. And he even mentioned mid-size, like the medium-sized businesses, not just the small ones.
Volk gucke und ist ja gut, dass man überall helfen wolle oder sonst irgendwas, aber irgendwann ist es halt irgendwo am Ende. Mhm. Also es geht mittlerweile bei uns in unserem deutschen Mittelstand um die Existenz und das kann man nicht mehr so ganz nachvollziehen.
So people who are still advocating for this is why I'm telling you, like, this is a problem. This is a problem. I'm going to go to this comment. Mark says, same here in the UK. Any MP arranging a rally would be expelled or at least suspended from the party. So there you go. I mean, how far is this going to go? How far is this going to go? You go from the pandemic and businesses having to close because of that. You go from that and then you go to this, like the inflation, the energy crisis. It's ridiculous when you really think about it. Now, how much is this going to cost Germany in the end? How much is this conflict going to cost Germany? Let's see. Okay, so Germany is one of the front runners, at least in Europe, that is sending aid. And it says, however, the Ukraine war will cost the German economy around 160 billion euros by the end of 2023. So that is 160 billion euros. That is equivalent to, why didn't you just do this for me? Why didn't you just do that? Like, why you had to make it like this? 160 billion. Why is it not doing this? This converter thing is a mess. Somebody may have already said in the chat. Sorry, for some reason, my this converter sucks. Let me go to the other one. Sorry. 160 billion euros to dollars. It's 168. Oh, it's more here. It's like 168 billion US dollars. Wait a minute. Yeah. Wait, did they do that right? I don't think they calculated that right. Let me go to this thing. Did they do? No, they did that by million. I don't know why they did by millions. I said billion. I said billion. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Hold on. They keep changing it to billion on million on here. I don't know why. Anyway, okay, here we go. 168 billion US dollars. That's coming from the German Chambers of Industry and Commerce. So they went ahead and rounded up to $171 billion, is around 4% of its gross domestic output. And for people who are not aware, Germany typically had a strong economy. At least they did when I lived there. So this can crush them. That's what I'm saying. Like when people say fight to the last Ukrainian, like at what cost? Because when you fight to the last Ukrainian, that means you're willing to fight until everyone's dead. And you're willing to fight until these other countries are bankrupt? At what cost? This is why we need to call for peace. Approximately $171 billion. See? It will affect the GDP capita of Europe's largest economy. $40% more for energy needs. Yes, they relied on cheap gas. I can turn the sound off as there's nothing being said there. The war in Ukraine has pushed Germany to opt for alternative gas suppliers. The German citizens are set to going to embrace for the impact of the ongoing war. See, this is what I really want people to see. And I want more people to talk about this. Like, what is it actually going to cost them in the end when this is all said and done? Very crazy. Very crazy. Screen Art says, like the music, you liked it? Mikiko, people in the US now must be afraid to be tagged as domestic terrorists if going to protest. That's another possibility as well. But I've been seeing this across the board for quite a while, though, Miko, with other issues as well. James says nonviolent resistance shows who the bad guys are. Thank you for the super chat, Aisha. Sending love to you and your viewers, Sabby. Never stop exposing the psychopaths who run the world, who run our world. Thank you so much for that. Angela said, saw you and JB on Morpheus show earlier. That's right. That's right. Thank you for the super chat laugh. I'm in Europe. We have a folk memory. It passes down generations. We all have relatives that died in war. Everyone in Europe has been attacked in war. We know war is evil. The US should not assume they are immune. That's right. And I know about it as well. I mean, I was, my family was military. I know people who went to Iraq and didn't come back. And thank you for the super sticker, Melissa. Peace. Thank you so much for that. Absolutely. But you're right. The problem is the majority, since the Vietnam War, with the exception of the Vietnam War, the majority of Americans are not directly affected. Just as Laugh was just saying, that they've all been impacted by it. Yeah, Brian, I'm surprised by that too. Brian said, I'm surprised Germany has not called out the US for the Nord Stream unless not true. I'm surprised too. I'm surprised too. Wonder if they've seen that article yet. Or maybe they had, and like media just doesn't want us to see that they have.